another episode of You All Right Power Session. I'm your host, Darian.
And I'm Ray Clark. And of course, we have always with us our other co-host, Stephanie Bradley Blue, clinical therapist, who's going to be giving us a different perspective whenever we get out of line today. And then we have another guest with us. We had, what was it, about 2 episodes ago, I believe it was about 2 episodes ago. We have Kandis with us this afternoon. Thank you for coming back on, Kandis.
Thank you.
We're going to be talking about a subject that I think will, be able to resonate with all of us, which is, what would you say to your younger self? If there was a way to go back in time and find yourself at 10, 12, who knows what age, but a younger version of you would definitely get some kind of wisdom from an older version of you.
Facts.
And with that, I'm going to throw it back. Steph, I'm going to start off with you because you always like to give us a nice structure how we should maybe look at this. We always want to look at it the way, somebody who's a professional would. So, and you are just that.
I was having a conversation this morning because my sister was supposed to be on, but she wasn't feeling well. And, just people tend to look at things very differently. But when I think back about, or this question, it's not an evaluation of just saying, don't do this or don't do that to your younger self. But it is an assessment of what lessons you've learned and what would you really like to tell your younger self by way of lessons. Because the reality is, wherever you are right now, you couldn't have gotten here without particular experiences. Mm-hmm. So it would be, I would love to tell my younger self a whole lot of things, but had I not gone certain directions and done certain things, I wouldn't be the woman I am today. So it's also being careful. My mind went, my sister and I have been talking, and my mind went back to Back to the Future, where he goes back, and you have to be careful with the timeline, right? Because you go back and you disrupt the wrong thing, then you may not be the person you were when you left. And right. So when you take, as you take this retrospective look back, you got to be mindful too, even the tough things. You want to tell yourself you shouldn't have done that. But they were necessary experiences to help you develop into the individual that you are. So what was the lesson? It was more, what was the lesson, and what is wisdom you can give yourself based on the experiences that you've had, mm-hmm. to be able to say to yourself, hey, if you encounter this, maybe do this a little differently. So that's kind of the perspective that I take.
I know, I feel you. And from that mindset, from that direction, Candy, that leads us to you. Knowing what you know now, what would you tell your younger self in the area of finances, like credit score, businesses, the credit cards we shouldn't have got when we was younger? What would you tell yourself? What advice would you give your younger self?
It's crazy because my younger self now is my students, because I teach high school. So I take it as my younger self, I'm speaking to them all the time. So mm-hmm. as a time to talk to them. And the finance thing is so huge. And it's like one of those things that I'm still trying to get right at 40. Mm-hmm. And because we learned nothing when we were younger, it's something that you're just now getting to the point of understanding. So right. For them, I always tell them, take a financial class. Like, I'm so big on trying to talk to the guidance counselors. Like, I think it should be like, who do we need to talk to? Because it should be a requirement for graduation.
Yeah.
It should be something that you have to take, because we're setting the kids up for failure. Because if your parents aren't good with it, you're lost. You know what I'm saying? And it's almost a trial and error period, but it's so big and it's just hard to, you know what I'm saying? Like, you still trying to get it right. Tell the kids, don't get the credit cards. Be smart with your money. Budget. Be smart. Use the TikTok videos. Like, everything. They have so many things to help them. I try to tell them to use the things, the apps, for what they are, and to help themselves. You know, if somebody is telling you Tools, yes. If somebody is telling you to use these things, try them. Don't look at your parents. If you see them struggling, look at those things and try to do better than them. You
Right.
know. So, but that financial piece, learn all you can now before you get into the real world, because it is no joke. And I would tell them, financial piece being, I would tell them, if you don't need to go to college, don't go to college. If that makes sense. If you want to be a teacher, lawyer, doctor, therapist, don't go.
Wow.
Go out. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you can go to a community college, and get out in 2 years, they make just as much money. If school is not for you, don't let nobody make you think you have to be a college graduate to be successful, because that's almost not the truth at all.
That's huge what you just said. That's definitely.
It's,
I completely agree with that. Especially back in our day, you know, the shows was pushing college, and the parents, if you wasn't going, they felt like in the neighborhood, they felt that they raised you wrong, you know.
right.
They want to poke their chest out. My kid is going to Yale, you know, things of that nature, yo. So I completely agree with that. What y'all got on the finance tip?
I think that's part of the financial literacy piece, right? As time has gone by and things have changed, it's really understanding systemically what has happened, especially in particular communities, to keep us in a place of financial illiteracy. And so if I could tell my younger self anything, it was, you know, it's to first of all make myself aware that although my parents did well, right, they did okay, and they were decent middle class people who owned their home and owned cars and did, you know, did pretty decent for themselves. They didn't know how to communicate financial literacy. They just, you know, happened to do better than what their parents did, right? But it wasn't because I really think that they understood what they were doing. So because they didn't understand, they didn't know how to communicate it. And I think that that's a larger, you know, that's the other issue about having that conversation with your younger self. In order for you to have it, you've had to have learned some things, right? To have some
Right.
information to give yourself or to give, you know, the younger generation. And when it comes to financial literacy, I think I'm still in, you know, I'm in my 50s learning things every day that I had no idea of, but I think intentionally we're not given. You know, it's information we're just starting to learn and get because of social media, because people are putting that information out there now. And so now I think we're more equipped to be able to do so, to give that information to not just our younger selves, but to the high school students and to other people, and to tell them, you know, I never would have considered telling my children that college was not a route.
Right.
You understand?
Right.
But my youngest son, I'm telling him now, you're not going to, just because that's not something that I'm not about to do that. Like, we're not doing that. Just simply because I don't want you to have to deal with that debt. Like, why would you have to go into life with that level of debt? And it's not something that you really want to do. You don't even know if you want to do it yet.
Right.
Like, and only we, you know, we do that because it was kind of, it was a mentality, it was a culture, it was, you know, a part of a culture of people and a generation. And it was also, I think, a part of a systemic value that was intentionally set up to keep us in a position of not being financially
Right.
literate.
Yeah. What you got, Ray?
Specifically as it pertains to finances, a lot, but but the first concept or idea that I would tell my younger self is stay home until you're ready to leave, and be able to go either buy a condo or a house. Stay home till you're like 25 if you need to, 26, so what? But don't make babies. Don't create any extra financial hardships for yourself when you have the ability to actually preserve your credit and go out and be able to hit the ground running without ever being a renter.
Right.
That would be number one, to get something that is going to hopefully appreciate in value and build equity for you, because we have a lot of people who just, they don't realize that, hey, you can buy a house at 22, 21. If you took from 18, the 4 years that someone puts in college, if they took that same 4 years, stayed home, stacked their dough, and just gradually built their credit with a gas card and one credit card, you can go buy a condo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But-
Yeah.
Never have to pay rent.
Like
Yeah.
really, I look at it now, if I could go back, I wanted to be a nurse when I came out of school. I would have went to community college. Nurse from community college. I would have went to school, but I would have let my job pay for me to go back and get my my BS in. But I probably would have lived in a tiny house. Like that would have been me. Like I would have lived in a tiny house. I wouldn't have had kids so early. I would have waited till I was at least 30 to be able to do all that grind and put all those hours into working and all of that stuff that we kind of do now. But you have kids, so you feel guilty about the whole, I got to work to get back. You know what I'm saying? But you find a lot of kids are trapped in that. But that's what happens. We end up doing it backwards. We're learning now in our 40s how to do it. So now you kind of working and get yourself out of your debt and stuff like that. But I would have either bought like a little cheap fixer-upper house, or I would have got a little tiny house and been totally fine with myself. You know what I mean?
In my mind, as a kid in high school, my idea was, oh, you have to, people who buy houses have, you know, a wife and kids, and they have all these other things going on. I wasn't even looking at it from investment or, you know, standpoint of just building something. I thought it was like you get a house and you live in it for 20 years. You know,
but there were no older us's.
18-year-old me never even imagined that at 22, 23, I could have went and got a condo.
There were no older us's.
I've been ahead of my friends who went to college.
Yeah.
But
you make a point what you're saying, Steph. You make a point what you're saying, that our parents didn't know any better, man.
They didn't know no better. There was no wisdom to be given to us to be able to make those choices. And so the wisdom is going to have to come from us for the generations following, because they didn't know any. This information was not given them. It was not like they weren't allowed. They weren't privileged to this information. Systemically, it was created for us to be illiterate financially. Okay, we're gonna let y'all read, we're gonna let y'all do it all, but we're not gonna give you we're gonna hold these parts away. Like this information is not going to be given. And so it was very rare to find, you know, that information floating around in our community readily and available. My parents I never had a conversation with my parents who, like I said, owned a home, had about the home buying process, about credit. Like I didn't have those conversations. I found out about that after I jacked my credit up.
Right.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get nothing. And I'm like, well, what's the problem? Why can't I go buy a car? You know, then we had this conversation. Like, I'm like, what? Like, what is that? Like, there is no, there was just not had, but I don't think they understood it because nobody explained it to them.
When it comes to the, this is just my take on it. I feel like neither of my parents went to college. So they were sold this dream that, well, if you want your kids to have a better life, they must go to college. So that was the end all be all to them. They didn't even think to tell me how they owned already 3 houses by the time they were 30. You know what I'm saying? They didn't think to tell me any of those things, because it was like, hey, yeah, I did that without a college degree. So imagine what you're gonna do with one. And it doesn't work like that.
Yeah,
it doesn't.
Facts. And back then you said something, right? You spoke on it saying that we was either hauling butt to get out that house, or our parents was telling us to get out that house around 18, 19 years old. And nowadays we are telling our kids, no, make sure you're financially stable. We're slowing it up. We're making sure, hey, listen, if you don't want to go to college, this is another route. We're like you said, Steph, this our generation that's stopping these curses that's been going on. You gotta understand, we ain't too far from slavery. That's a whole lot of people who just who still got that mindset. You know what I'm saying? So it's one step at a time. You know what I'm saying? It's up to us for the future generations. I think our kids and our kids are going to be more. It's going to be more entrepreneurs out of them than ever before. On the financial.
For me, the value of this conversation for me is I always feel like because I'm a little older than all three of you,
Mm,
almost a different generation older, um, is that the generation that I'm in, I always say this to my friends who are my age, we dropped the ball because we had new information, but it was the adjustment to the whole um, technological thing for us.
Mhm.
I think it was just an adjust, and so for we didn't know how to manage it in those spaces, and
mm,
Mhm.
so and didn't know how to properly use it. And I always feel like that's a conversation we have all the time as far as our wisdom, our ability to be able to feedback as the connecting generation. I think that
mm,
that's the people who are in their 50s,
Mhm.
mm.
early 50s, between 50 and 60 now. I consider us the connecting generation between
Well,
that
I'm the
last set.
connecting generation. I'm 51.
Well, you with me too
I'm
then.
with you.
So like between the baby boomers and the millennials. We're that
Mhm.
connecting generation. And I feel like we dropped the ball big time when it came down to once we got the information, we didn't I don't we just got caught up and
Yeah,
didn't
Yeah.
properly communicate it.
yeah, I definitely agree. Moving on to the next topic though, with the same mindset, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your younger self, Candace, when it comes to dating, marriage, and relationships?
Like I said, I think I said it earlier, but I wouldn't have had kids and got married. Well, I still didn't get married till I was 33, but I would have waited. I did have a child before that, but I would have waited for all of that. I think you need to have all the fun you need to have before you even start trying to settle down, have the kids. I think you need to go through that hustle mindset,
Mm-hmm.
because that takes you away from your family and the people you love and building relationships. You know what I'm saying? To have that good marriage or anything like that, I think you need to go through all those phases before you're 30. Like, it's no rush for it. And I don't think you know who you are before you're 30. You know what I'm saying? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
think you experience what life has, travel, all of those things before you even start trying to date and learn yourself first. Like, I think that's the biggest thing now. And I think we didn't really take that time. Like, now you hear so many people talk about self-love and all of that stuff, like loving yourself first. Because just like I think the financial piece was dropped, I think that self-love piece was like you got it, but you didn't get it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's things that weren't communicated. I think the communication piece was just dropped. Like, I think we just watched TV, kind of, let's look at the Cosby's and kind of watch this episode or watch Good Times. You know what I'm saying? I think
After
those were,
school specials, all that type stuff. We was learning from them. Yep, you're right. Keep
we
going.
were learning from TV.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody really communicated the things that we needed. We saw it, but we didn't see it. If you happen to grow up in a family that mom and dad were together, you look back now and it's like, should they have even been together like that long? Like, you don't really remember your parents having conversations. Dad worked all the time, mom was home. Like, but is that really something good to look at? Like, are you teaching your kids anything?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, dad's supposed to work all the time. Mom supposed to be home with the kid. You know what I'm saying? Like, the kids are seeing her frustrations of being home with them. You know what I'm saying? So I think if you take that time to grow and find yourself first before you start the whole getting serious with dating, I think it's better. You'll have a more successful marriage and family. Um, so I would say take your time and date as many people as you want to find out what it is that you want, because you're never gonna find that 100% of anybody, but you need to make sure that you find somebody that matches where you are in life.
Right.
Um, I think that's real important, because if you kind of in a relationship that with someone that grew up in a totally different mindset than you, you're always gonna bump heads if they're still there and you're somewhere else.
Mhm.
So I think you need to find that and make sure that you don't get entangled in those things and have kids too fast with somebody you don't really know.
Mhm.
So I think take your time with that dating and marriage piece. Take your time. Mm.
Mm.
Enjoy it when you're older.
That's right. What you got, Stephanie?
I feel very opposite of Miss Candace.
Mhm.
um, I feel that way for two reasons. One, because I've seen, I have parents who are married for 52 years, and I've seen communication. I've
Mhm.
seen working together. I had really great relationships with not just my parents, but my mom had five brothers. Um, and they didn't have perfect marriages. They were divorced, got married again, but I saw what blended families look like. My aunts who had children by then, they were never ostracized from the family. They could bring their new boyfriend, whatever. We all was family.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So I saw family work.
Mhm.
Um, Not perfect, definitely not always on the same page, definitely had its dysfunctions and its issues. But I saw it work and I saw how it worked inside community and I saw how it developed the community around it.
Mhm.
So I've never taken the perspective that it's better to be by yourself. That's just never like, I mean, to spend some 10, 15 years by yourself figuring yourself out. I believe that we know the best, our best selves is often reflected in how we manage other people. Because if you want to be in life and have any type of purpose, you can't do that without knowing who you're supposed to be juxtaposed to other people.
Mhm.
So, and the best place to learn that is inside family. So that's my first area. So I feel like, you know, if we had been taught certain things, right, and had understanding of certain things by the age 25, I have a sister who's been married for 40 years to her husband. She got married at 25. She did go to college. They did, he was a little older, but they've been married for 40 years. When I was 10, they got married and they have a beautiful relationship and three beautiful children. Um, and she stayed home until she got married. Well,
Mhm.
almost. But just those kinds of things where when I look at other cultures where their marriages are arranged or their marriages are confirmed with other people, those marriages tend to last statistically. Um, I think the community needs to be involved in how we date. And I think because we've X'd the community out of that and just put those, and maybe I got old school views about that, maybe so, but when you look at other cultures and other communities and how they function and we start talking, if it's all about the community, right, and all about the building of people as a whole, a lot of these truths and wisdoms that we have wouldn't have been missed had we not been so autonomous. And I think that's a very Western view. That idea of autonomy. I have to have this season of total autonomy in order for me to be able to come back then to the world after I've sown my royal oats and come back. That now I'm ready to settle down. And I think that season of autonomy keeps you from being able to get the wisdom you need to get,
Mhm.
keeps you outside of the community, keeps you outside of certain things. And so you're out there just, making the mistakes that we making, doing the things that we doing. And then after, we finish doing that, we want to come back now and try to draw it back in. But we have to deal with the consequences then of what we've done out here sowing our royal oats and hustling and doing all this stuff when we could have
Mhm.
just sat still for a little while, stayed at home, listened to our parents, um, negotiated around dating and who we were going to see and taking some advice and allow the community to be involved because you ain't bring no man home. And back in the day, like with my parents, and we had a family session going on at least two times a month. Everybody met the boyfriends, so like that was going down, and so they would have to make it through the grilling of the five uncles or whoever was going to be around and cousins and whoever. So those kinds of things don't happen anymore. And
Mhm.
so as a result of that, you know, it's just I got to go figure my life out before I settle down. And I'm like, but if you're a solid individual at 25 and you haven't spent all your money and you're financially literate and you meet someone who's on the same plane as you, why not build together? Why try to do this? The scripture, we go to the scripture, we can go to the Bible. It says two is always
Absolutely.
better than one.
If you're
Two is
there.
better than one, you
Right.
know.
Right.
Uh,
What you got, Ray?
woo. Okay, man, I love both of y'all's answers because they're not the same, but they both have really valid points as far as like, and for me, it's about just knowing yourself. I kind of disagree with you, Steph, and I kind of disagree also with you, Kandis, a little bit too, because now you're throwing in the testosterone factor. And what I mean by that is you can have this time of autonomy and you can go out and slay dragons and kill lions and do all these things and focus on what your passion is. Women are gonna be there. And that sounds wrong, maybe, but that's what I would tell my younger self. Don't worry about none of them. Focus on your passion and get to this point of self-actualization. I knew what I wanted to be when I was young, and I didn't get to be that. But I could have been that because I missed the boat, because I didn't focus on the things that I should have focused on. So I don't know. Sometimes there's a different mechanism to it too, because we don't have that biological clock ticking to say, oh, I have this window of time. There's men out here who, you know, they make their first baby at 40, but they married a woman who's 27, but they went out and made all their money, so they're not worried about that. Mm-hmm. It's just, it's so different for men, and I'm glad I'm a guy. I'm not saying that like, you know, against women, but it's harder for y'all. It's way harder for y'all, to me. And from my perspective, just in seeing a sister, cousins, my mother, having a daughter now, this the validation of being in a relationship for women sometimes is so much, whereas for guys, we don't have that same validation craving. I don't feel like we do. And I could be wrong, because we're like, there's plenty of fish in the sea. Those old sayings, I've seen them play out, especially when the man becomes successful and he does have that time of autonomy, and then he can pretty much call the shots and then get what he wants because he did go get those things first. I would tell myself, get the money, focus on your passion, do whatever it is that you want to do, and meet that, get to that point of self-actualization, and all those other things you want are going to come along with it.
Can I ask you a question though?
Yes.
Historically speaking, right? If things generationally were different, like I said, I speak a lot, when I'm thinking a lot of times, I'm thinking about our particular community, but when things generationally were different, rites of passage for a man started at 14 years old. And I think that there's a reason for that, because when men were present and they were handing this wisdom down to young men at 14 and 15, those moments started for them at 14 and 15 years old. So by the time they were 20, 25, that focus was there. When that was taken out of the community, now that timeline shifts. And so we have that happening. But I don't, you know, men and women weren't so far off when it came down to emotional maturity, mental maturity, even like financial responsibility and maturity, because the rites of passage for them started much younger, and there were other men present to give that wisdom to them, so that all those moments were happening to them at 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old. By the time they were 25, they were focused. It wasn't 40. The age now is 40.
I
You know, so
I want to
and has it become that because of the lack of presence and wisdom from males in those spaces to be able to start galvanizing and rallying men together into a place of security at a younger age and pulling them into a place of emotional maturity?
I want to interject just a little bit, because you're correct that all of those things were there. You're also correct when you said arranged marriages last longer. But these things are basically, I'm a man of my time. So all of those things, they don't work now in the same way.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Our culture and society is not structured in such a fashion that that style is going to be as advantageous. We're in a world where time has literally sped up. Time has sped up. And so these things with arranged marriages, yeah, the marriages last longer, but if you go and do a poll of those same women, sometimes you feel fulfilled because you don't know anything else. You've been
I mean,
so
I get it.
early
Yeah, I was just making a
indoctrinated
point of
into
that.
it. Though in those same cultures where the arranged marriages last longer, the women don't have careers as much. The women are
Right.
solely the home caregivers. You go
I
to
agree.
these career women and tell them that, they're like, I ain't giving it my career to do that. So it's like, I'm a man of my time, of this time. And so knowing
When I
what
was,
I know now, if I'm talking to my younger self, I'm going to be like, dude, you're going to be on the cusp of a new millennium.
Mhm.
when
You
I
need
speak
to
of,
you
when,
need to have a plan that's going to work for what time you're going to live in. I can't
right,
that's like me giving myself the technology my father had when he was 18. I don't want
right. No, when I
when I
spoke
turn
of that,
18, I need today's technology,
right.
and I
When
need today's tools to maneuver through today's environment and landscape. It's not the same world.
it's not, and I agree. And when I spoke even of the arranged marriages, I was just saying that because they still practice them in other cultures and they're still very technologically booming. So, you know, when I speak of
Yeah, they're
India and other countries,
technologically
they're
booming,
technologically booming spaces.
but how many
Let me,
women are running the businesses? How many women
there are a
are
few,
running in the
there
boardroom?
are, there are plenty
It's
women
not,
who are doctors and lawyers and doing all those things that were in
I don't,
arranged marriages. I've met
I'm
them.
not saying
So,
that
so,
there's an
so
exception to the rule, but I care about the rule, not the
I understand,
exception to the rule.
but that's not even
I
my
don't care about the
argument.
anomaly. I care about the one that I care about
No,
what is most pervasive and or the standard.
right. So I hear what you're saying. And even when I brought that up, I brought it up to discuss, you know, to lay it out, right? As the extreme. What I'm saying, what I meant essentially though is the involvement of community, where
Mhm.
you don't necessarily have to pick my husband for me, and we don't have to go to that extreme, right? Where we're actually arranging marriages, but that we when we completely do for me the opposite to that is a total autonomy life, and then jump back in and say, okay, now I'm ready to marry somebody,
Well,
when
I
you've
think,
not had any involvement from your community and any involvement from the persons that are closest to you, because we don't normally do that. Like
so I
that's the
would,
stage we usually rebel. We want to do our own thing. We're going to date the guy that's completely opposite of everything that our parents may have said they, you know, may have looked like. Like we go through those phases, and I think the wisdom that I would pass down to my younger self is to slow yourself down. It's okay. You don't have to, you ain't got to be out here doing all that hustle and bustle. It's okay to stay home. It's okay to take mom and dad's advice about somebody. It's
right.
okay to, you know, make those, you know, eh, like I said, when I made those up, with those other things were the extremes to me, right? Of that concept, as extreme to me in my mind of sowing your roller oats and waiting until you're 35. I just feel like there has to be a happy medium. I do agree with you that fits in the culture, and that makes sense in our time, but also supports the idea of family and community. That for me is the
Here's
bottom
what
line.
I guess. See, I'm taking the question as, what would I tell my younger self?
Hmm.
I'm only talking about what I would have told me.
Right.
Right, but I'm
And
not an island.
knowing what I know now about myself, I would have taken more time to further the talents, the natural God-given talents that I have, to become fully mature within who I am as myself before I even worry about attaching myself to another individual.
Mhm.
But
Then
part
I
of your
would have
full
been
maturity
then I would
is
have been a
how you
super
manage.
version of me. I would have never been in corporate America. I would have been an artist somewhere, and I would have been living a different life.
I completely agree. Let me get in here right quick with this. I got married young. You know what I'm saying? 21 years old. Going and we are going on 24 years of marriage. Ask me would I do it again? Fuck no,
Mhm.
I wouldn't. Sorry to say it like that. Excuse my language, but no, I would tell my younger self, yo, Joe, you need to wait until you are a better man. You'll find yourself more. You're more mature. You're more financially stable. And I would have gave my time frame to be about 25, 28. I wouldn't have waited to 30 something, but that's what Ray said he would do for himself. I'm telling you what I would do for myself.
Mhm.
So but I would have been around 25, 28, financially stable, more focused, know exactly what I want out of life, know who I am as a man. You know what I'm saying? There was a lot of growth that I had to do. I remember when I got married and one of my sisters pulled me to the side and said, boy, she laughed. She said, congratulations. But she said, do you know how many changes you're going to make between now and 30? And you're with someone who's going to make the same amount of changes too between now and 30.
Right.
The person you are right now, you're not going to be when you're 28, 30 years old. And she's not either. But it takes two people to be mature and deal with each other through a time. Has it been a roller coaster? Yes. Um, with all those arranged marriages and things of that nature, and people who've been together for 50 something years, that's if both parties are mature and unselfish.
Right.
You know what I'm
Absolutely.
saying? And that's the reason
Right.
why me and mine have been together so long. 'Cause there's a lot of people who would have been bounced. It takes a lot. It's a lot to it, you know. And children,
Situations
I
with
would
the
have pushed
arranged,
off the children, huh?
most of those situations with the arranged marriages, and I know that wasn't what Steph you were
That
saying.
wasn't my point.
That's not
It's not the. It's not
goal.
the. Yeah, go.
But
Yeah.
like, I guess what I'm looking at it like, it's all, I don't want to say brainwashed, but it's like you're indoctrinated so heavily into something in those situations where it's like you don't even question it. This is who my parents picked. This is who I'm gonna marry. There's a dowry. I'm gonna get whatever. And there's all these standards and rules that are set where it's just a cookie cutter type thing. Like, and then there's an expectation placed on that female for whatever she's supposed to be doing in the relationship as well, as far as like, you know, you're gonna become a mother now. There's not no time. You're married. It's time to start spitting out the babies. You know what I mean? So it's like,
But it's not as antiquated as that any longer. So I'm challenging that only because I've been in these communities in the last 5 years, and it's no longer that antiquated. So that's conceptually what it was 40, 50 years ago. It is not that antiquated, at least not in the community and the culture that I was a part of, for the period of time that I was a part of it. And it's not what I saw. Now, can it be? Are there spaces? It definitely, it has a lot to do with class and hierarchy and all those things, not to go down a rabbit hole, but it's not as antiquated. It has also evolved with the time that we're in. They use, sometimes parents sit down and use actual apps and things, that dating sites that are geared towards that. So that world has changed a lot. My whole, like I said,
they
my
got
point about
apps
it.
for the arrangement.
Yes, yes, and that they can review the person, meet the person, meet the family. Yes, honey, it is not the
Well, that's
antiquated
just,
thing
I mean, that's
Yeah,
that it
dope
was
I,
just.
that
I, I have
they
It's
heard
not
it's
that.
evolved, but
changed. True,
Yeah, it's definitely changed. And so
it's
what I'm,
changed.
my point about it is the involvement of community and the closeness, and for me, and not, I don't think that way, right? So let me just clarify my thought process for everybody. Um, I think it's that idea, right? I can't speak to my younger self and not discuss with her how she allowed that need, right, to go out and do her own thing, to disconnect her from the people that cared about her most. And and oftentimes when we're in those spaces, that's what we tend to do. And um, so the voice of the community and the voice of wisdom, we begin to push back on that. And we're usually in a state of rebellion when we're doing a lot of that stuff. And so for me, it would be to be sure to tell her, don't do that. Like, that is probably the last thing you should do. You need the community. Being able, that's why I think the biggest difference is, it's not even about technology, Ray. The biggest difference between our generation and the generations under us is they completely do not hear or are not open. We've given them this carte blanche to just be whoever and do whatever, and this
not
level of
me, not
entitlement that they
anymore.
just like, and this sense of entitlement has overtaken them, and we wonder where it's come from.
I
You think
mean,
Because
that you think that and
there's
you
no
think
it is,
check.
it is,
that's
it
our
is a
fault?
form of
I'm
technology
not
because
saying it's
most
our
of them
fault,
think they know it all because everything is at their,
right?
it's
They don't
in their
have to
hand.
ask
All they
us.
gotta
They don't
do is
have to.
Google and they know they
Right,
feel like they know it all.
It's the
right.
microwave.
They
It's the
don't have to
microwave
ask us.
Yes,
now.
yes.
They don't have to
Everything is
ask
now.
us,
They don't have to
and they
ask
don't have to.
questions.
There's
They
no
don't have to go
wisdom,
research. All they gotta do is just ask, hey, what's this? Boom, right there.
and their opinion is
Facts.
validated wherever you choose to Google. You can find an opinion just like yours to support your
Facts.
crazy. You can
Facts.
you can
Facts.
you can find an opinion to support any level of crazy you want to. Or and you know, I'm probably all, you know, outside my ethical bounds even when using that word, but any level of you know, of thinking that you have, you can find an opinion to support that. And so there's been no need. So there's been this distinct disconnect from the voice. Because whenever I say, when you ask me the question about speaking to my younger self, you're asking me about wisdom, the generation that's before me. You're asking me to listen now to that space. There's been a complete disconnect with these following generations to even hear.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I like to think that the generation like that I teach now and have been teaching, that they are like the product of teen moms or
Mhm,
teen parents. So
mhm,
now because they're there, their parents were a product of a teen mom. Because you
mhm,
look now, grandmas are what? Great grandma's like 60, your grandma is 50. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like, so your grandma is
Shoot,
still working.
grandma 40.
Grandma
Yeah,
about
okay,
40,
grandma's
Yeah, 40.
35.
45.
But
you know,
yeah, yeah.
35.
depend
35,
Grandmama's
38 too.
35.
Yeah.
exactly. So they're still working. They still have a lot of years to put in. They're still working because they're getting it right. Your great grandma is still working. Like when we grew up, we was at our grandparents' house all summer.
All
So we
summer.
got that knowledge, that wisdom. I don't think the kids get that anymore. They're missing that. That, oh, you grow up and you work, that ethic. You know what I'm saying? Like I used to stay with my grandparents all summer. My great grandma used to stay with her all summer. She taught me how to cook. She taught me how to work. She taught me how to hang clothes on the line. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like make stuff from scratch. Like kids don't get that anymore.
Right.
Because by the time they're 14, their parents is like, oh, you can stay home and watch your brother and your sister. So you're
Hmm.
becoming a parent at maybe 11 or 12 to your
True.
younger brothers and sisters. So look who's raising them.
True.
You know what I'm saying? So it is a grow up fast, but they had to grow up fast. So yeah, my brothers and sisters got to grow up fast. You know what I'm saying? Because they like, look, the sooner you learn this, I can go hang with my friends. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So it's like they're raising themselves, but that's where they're at, and they don't get the knowledge from anybody because
Mhm.
Hmm.
everybody now is still trying to live. I'm trying to retire.
Yep.
You
Yep.
know, your great grandma's 60 and she's still working.
Yep.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
so I think it's that they're trapped in that, and they're learning from the internet now. You know,
Yep.
so where does that? You know what I'm saying? So you got to find those people that want to talk to them
Say
and
that
try.
again. They're learning from the internet now.
Yeah,
Yes, but that's
That's
the
it.
point, right?
That's
So there
it. That's
got
the
to be a
point of
happy
everything is
medium.
at their fingertips. At that
Yeah.
phone. That phone is everything.
yeah,
Yeah. What are
You
we
you
going to
want to
do?
destroy your child nowadays? Take away their phone. Cut off
yeah.
the Wi-Fi.
That's the first thing. That's the first thing they know.
Ooh,
Take your phone.
meltdown.
Yeah,
Take your phone.
meltdown. Straight up.
Absolutely.
This
But
that they got.
I
They
like,
start going through withdrawals, man.
yeah,
For real.
Come
I
on,
like
man. I need
the
Wi-Fi.
yeah, scratch.
Facts. For real.
I
Hey,
like as an
man.
aunt though, like a older person, like people, my kids always be like, "You're like old," like so. But I was always around older people, so I
Hmm.
was like, if I don't give it to y'all, y'all probably won't ever hear it. I said, so I'm gonna talk to you. I'm blue in the face. You ain't gonna
That's
say you
right.
did hear it. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? I don't care if you 20 years later be like, dang, Coach Rainey told me that. That's it.
Hmm.
You heard it though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I feel like it gotta be more people really bringing that old stuff back to them
It
because
has to come back.
it has to.
And
It
that's what
has
that's
to.
and that's what I'm challenging and saying,
Yeah.
you know, Ray, like that's what I'm saying. I'm like, at some point we have to begin to reintroduce. At some point, somebody's going to have to pick up the mantle and say, my responsibility to my older self is my responsibility to every 14-year-old boy, 13-year-old boy, 12-year-old boy that's coming up right now.
It got
I
to
can't
start
talk to her.
somewhere.
My older self is walking around every day. My
Yeah.
Hmm.
younger self, you know? So my responsibility is to them. So I can't answer that question without thinking macrocosmically sometimes, or you know, larger than just me. I can't
Yeah.
answer it that way. So that's probably where, you know, not where we're kind of perceiving it differently. I don't know how to answer that question outside of that because I deal with young ladies all the time. I see them every day.
Even if I was not just talking to the younger me, the younger people at large who haven't yet made life altering decisions, I still stand by what I'm saying in terms of you do need a time to picture in your mind what you want for you, not no one else. What you want for you. Who do you want to, or rather, who do you want to, what do you see yourself becoming? And then go for that first.
Right.
I don't
If
disagree.
that means a time of autonomy to get that first, you can't be the best whoever you're going to be for the next person until you be fully mature certain things within yourself. And
I don't disagree.
Too many. The greatest drug for any one individual is another person.
Yeah, that's it.
Stop being addicted to validation from into other people. You validate you first.
Yeah,
and
that's facts.
Now everything is a validation for them.
Everything.
Social media of all these perfect people, and these people live in this way, and they don't understand that they just paid for this room to look like this for me to do my podcast.
Yes,
like that. You know what I'm saying? But they set up the room to look like this. You know what I'm saying? But that's what they're facing. So when you talk about it, getting to know yourself, I think we try to address the kids that we deal with now because they have grown up so early.
They don't know what they like. All they know is what they've been told to like.
They have to take the time because they grew up. They had to grow up at 11.
Right. So and that's where the intervention comes 18.
In. You know what I'm saying? So that's for them to get somewhere and be by themselves and figure out who they want to be, because they've had to grow up so fast now that us talking to ourselves, our younger self, you got to adjust so much to the times.
Exactly.
Really, really, really hard, because kids can't really work at 9 like they used to could back in the day, like our grandparents. Like somebody getting locked up if your kid is working at 9. Like
exactly.
The pun. You know what I mean?
It's a problem.
It's a problem. And it wasn't a problem for our grandparents. It was perfectly fine.
It was. But I think it's the intervention for me. It's the intervention for me. It's the fact that there is a responsibility, right?
Yeah.
And it's just because it's changed doesn't mean we have to continue to allow it to continue to go. I was telling my friend this the other day. It's something about a mooring line or a foundation. When the foundation is gone, you can't build jack.
No.
And I think what I'm saying is foundational. There are some things that we have I don't think that everything we got to keep. But foundationally, there's some things that we will let go to the wayside and go away.
Right.
That we are not communicating to our generations and to the kids underneath us. That because it's gone, we're looking at a future where they have the framework is just it's real shoddy.
Yeah.
It's shoddy framework. So give them it's shoddy framework, sis. And so somebody got to come along and say, hey, I ain't gonna take you back to marrying, picking your husband, but let's talk about where we are right now. How can I assist you? What can I do to be present? Not on a screen, not on a YouTube, not in a TikTok, but how can I show up for you? Because part of your problem is attachment issues anyway, and disconnect from the world. So how can I physically show up for you to help you and impart this wisdom to you to cause you to trust? Because just because they're taking validation from other people doesn't mean they trust other people. And a lot of what we're dealing with.
They've been let down so much. That's why they don't trust.
Right.
You
know what I'm saying? One another.
And if they can't trust the people who's in their house, why are they gonna trust you? You know what I'm saying? Since like you said, babysitting at 11, so much stuff is going on. You know what I'm saying? Wherever they live up, however they came up, and then here you come. You have to earn that trust, and that's why they send back looking at you in the beginning like, who are you? I agree with you. Foundation is everything. If that foundation is strong, you build today, and we cannot forget where we came from. We can't
There's got to be a center somewhere. I can't know me without having some center to something, and that is required. I don't care what you say or do; it's required. And what we're allowing to happen is, and I hear what you're saying, Ray, but what these children are in reflection of and trying to figure out who they are. They're doing that in reflection of the latest rapper. They're doing that in reflection of the latest influencer. They're doing that in reflection of all of that.
Because
somebody gotta say something.
Why Steph? Because they have no one else to follow.
No one else
You
to
know
do
what
it.
I'm
So
saying?
somebody's gonna have to
So they
come along and
following
say
the
something.
little babies, the little this, the dig that
Yeah.
that's what they following because
know,
no one
that,
else is stepping
you
up.
know,
Now I
don't
say that
disagree.
my last question, and let's get out of here. And this is gonna open it up one more time. For real. What's something you're gonna tell your younger self, listen, you're gonna have difficulties in this area, but it's not your fault. You're looking at your younger self and you're saying, listen, you're gonna have difficulties in this area and it's not your fault.
Finances.
Speak on it. What's that area?
Finances should be
Finances.
every here, just because of where we started. Finances is going to be something that, well, I know for a fact for me, finances. And like, I can't even speak for myself, but because I teach so many kids, like little things as far as communication, how you communicate is not going to be your fault. You know what I'm saying? Because you've learned to yell your entire life.
Yeah.
That's what you've seen, and that's how you feel you communicate. That's not your fault though. But
Mm-hmm.
it is your responsibility to fix it.
Yeah.
Just because that's what you learned, that doesn't mean it has to stay there. And I preach
Yeah.
that all the time to my kids. Because what you see at home, that doesn't mean that's where you have to stay. So
Yeah.
it is your job to heal. You know what I'm saying? To get the therapy, because you know therapy is something that we were taught you're not supposed to
You
get.
could you are a product of your surrounding. You don't have to be your surrounding. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And that's all facts. And that's all facts. That on regards of the finances, that's one thing that I would add, that I would tell my younger self. He will have a difficulty in this area, but it's not his fault, and that's his being a man and being a father figure. I didn't have that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I didn't have that. I didn't have no powerful, strong male figure that was over me, telling me this is what you need to do this. This is how you need to be. This is what it takes to be a great father. I had to learn all those things the hard way.
Along the
So that's what I listen. You're gonna go through these struggles, but it's not your fault. And a lot of that, us as men or women, we take that to heart. But we got to remember, we did not have that role model. You know what I'm saying? To lead us that way. That's one. The other thing I would say is stop expecting yourself out of others.
Absolutely.
That's big.
You know what I mean? Stop expecting. And I'm big on that, because I'm just one of those loyal, I got you, honest, genuine people, showing up on time all the time. And I'm like, yeah, man, I'm here at 4. You know what? Why they ain't here? And I used to always try to expect myself out of others, and it would piss me off all the time. But when I had to learn, hey, calm down, bro, and just take people for face value, I got a lot better with that. So I would definitely tell my younger self that as well.
Yeah. And I think too, like, I think the biggest thing that whatever your biggest trauma that you go through, is happening for a reason. Because I say all the time, my cut was one of the best things that probably could have ever happened to me. And people be like, you crazy? I would do it again. Because I said I needed all of those lessons in that. But because I took the time to take the lesson, it worked for me. It doesn't work for everybody, because some people are stuck in the, why did this happen to me? I'm depressed. I'm in a pity party. So some people miss what they're supposed to get from things. Like, even if you get shot, okay, yes, horrible thing to happen. But what all is God trying to show you? You weren't supposed to be there. Look at your people that you was around. Look at your friends. You know what I'm saying? What situation did you put yourself in to get you in that situation?
True.
You know what I'm saying? Was it a girl? Was it your friends? Did they leave you? Were they still there? Those are things I think you have to look at in your lessons. And those aren't your fault, but they are kind of your fault. You know what I'm saying? So you got to be able to take that accountability piece early and go with it. You know what I'm saying? And grow from those things.
And you can't you're not responsible for what you don't know and what you're not aware of, right? So a
But
lot of
learn.
times, yeah, but a lot of times people are just, doing the best with what they have
Yes.
and what you got. And so those aren't until someone makes you aware, right? Or makes you more aware. You have a moment, and one of my greatest lessons too, sir, was understanding that everybody don't think like me. Everybody don't move like me. Like, oh, and so those expectations for me had to change about
Right.
others, and and realizing that folks' process is so different. People process, everybody's the way they process things and grow is just different, and being able to respect that and meet people where they are
Ooh,
as a
yes.
result.
Ooh,
Yeah, meet
There you
people where
go.
they are,
yes.
and love them from that space. Those are things that it took me some time to learn, but I've come to learn, and I don't beat myself up for it. Even the things that I have done that may have been not worked out for me the best in
Hmm.
my attempt to be a blessing to other people.
Mm,
Um, that's what I was taught.
Hmm.
I
mhm.
don't know no better. So how now? But to take the wisdoms that I need to take, so that I'm not casting my pearl before swine, being a better discerner of who I'm dealing with. All those kinds of lessons are lessons that I've learned as a result, but I don't beat myself up for it.
Okay, outstanding. Ray, what's your final thought?
Uh, I mean, that question I didn't answer, but it was like
Okay, yeah, you got, yeah, my bad. Go ahead.
repeat it again, because this is just what would we tell ourselves in our young
You're gonna have difficulties in this area, but it's
difficulties,
not
but
your
it's
fault.
not. See, the part that trips me up on that question is that it's not my fault. I'm like,
Uh,
I don't. I have issues a lot. Judgment, finances. I'm a
mhm,
control freak, but I
mhm,
don't know if it's my fault. I guess it's my fault. I
mhm,
always think these things are my fault.
mhm,
So, because I'm a big believer in stop blaming other people. Wherever I am, even if someone else did it, I let them do it. So it's my fault that I let them do it. So I
mhm,
don't really blame other people, but
mhm,
I do judge. And
Well, fault doesn't
I
mean,
judge myself hard, but then I judge everyone else harder.
well, just because it's not your fault doesn't mean it's somebody else's fault. It just means
Okay.
that there's just things that innately happen, and it's not about everybody don't like rain,
yes,
but we
yeah,
need it.
yeah.
You know what
Facts.
I'm saying?
Love rain, love rain. Hey, and it like she said, just because it's not your fault don't mean it's someone else's fault.
Somebody
It
else.
could just be
Well, I don't know.
miscommunication or whatever. So yeah, I agree with that.
If my control freak stuff is not my fault, that would be great. But I think it is because I hate being on a plane. I hate being in a car with someone if I'm not the driver. I don't like to be out of control. I want to
Hmm.
control my fate as much as I can. So I take everything out of everyone else's hands and I do it. That
Hmm.
old saying of you want something done right, do it yourself. Oh man, I believe that. I do.
Mhm.
And
Right is relative.
I don't think it's always served me well because
Right is
several times
relative.
I was supposed to let
What you
someone
say,
else
Steph?
take
Say it
it.
again. Life is what?
I said right is
Right,
relative.
right is relative. Yep,
Right? Because I can
yep.
clean one way, you can clean another way, it can still come out clean, but your clean may be different from mine. That don't make yours right.
Yep,
Right is
exactly.
relative.
Right. And again, I guess I only am like that when it's something that I'm trying to get done. So I'm
Mhm.
not thinking about how anybody else wants it. I want it the way I want it. And if it ain't the way I wanted it, then I'm doing it over
Hmm.
until it's the
That's
way I want.
control.
That's a problem. Like
Yeah, it is. It is.
it's a
Yeah.
problem.
It is.
OCD.
I will rip it all up and start from scratch.
OCD.
OCD.
OCD. Yeah.
That you didn't
Hey,
see.
at least you're
Compulsively,
not
right.
in denial, brother. You know, he like,
That's
I
your fault.
stand
Yeah.
on my stuff. I stand on it. This is who I
It,
am.
it becomes your responsibility. It's not
Very
about fault. Right. It becomes
But
your responsibility
sometimes
when
I
you
need to
become
let
aware.
go. I'm not
Yep.
good at letting go. I'm not good at letting a lot of things. I'm not good at letting when it takes a lot to get me angry, but once I'm angry with someone, oh, forgiveness. I suck at it. I suck at
Well,
it.
you know what? It's not about fault at that point, right? It's about responsibility. The reality is what we've developed mentally and our practices and what's familiar to us That stuff, is generational DNA, all that kind of stuff.
I'm vengeful.
But listen, but once you become aware, okay, fall.
You
Your mic
muted
went
yourself.
out.
You muted
The
yourself.
mic went out.
Once you become aware, you are responsible now for that behavior, right? So it's not a matter of fault or not even being in fault or somebody else being in fault. But once there's a tangible awareness and you realize these things about yourself and you are no longer comfortable with them,
Pretty much,
you
you
have a
trying to say you know
responsibility.
what you're doing. So yeah, you are wrong,
You
bro.
have a responsibility. You
Yeah,
have now a responsibility
I
to
will
do something
obsess
about
on
that.
something. Like I will obsess on something. Like if I feel like somebody, I remember at one point in time, I was at in a corporate environment and I was having a discussion with a director about something that we shouldn't do, but I wanted to do it. And he was like, Ray, 2 wrongs don't make a right. And I said, but it makes us even. And that's all I cared about. Like, I never want to feel like you think you you got one over on me. That's just, I don't know where that comes from though. I really don't know where it comes from because I know people who they're like, they just let it go. No, I'm not letting it go till I get you back.
Well, trauma, like she said earlier, has a way.
You're never going to be good until I get you back.
Trauma has a way of impacting us. You have to make those connections. And so you may be aware of the behavior, but not aware of where it's come from and why you have it. And so there's still another level of awareness that you have to come into.
Yeah, because that's
before
sad.
You're ready to
know that I don't want to be that, but I feel like, yo, man, you can't, you ain't gonna play me.
There's layers to this thing. It's layers.
Being honest,
Layers.
I'm very transparent, and I love that about myself because I don't, I just say what I really believe. I'm not trying to put on a facade or a front, usually ever.
But you know what? I will say this about my observation of you, Ray. Sometimes what we're doing, especially when we're doing those kinds of things, are in defense of a much softer self that we don't want the world to bruise or hurt. And so
I agree with that.
So it's not so much that you're this mean guy.
She's trying to say you're a Care Bear underneath.
I am. That's why I take so much to heart. Because I feel like I'm a nice guy. I feel like I'm not no.
And you're borderline.
I'm looking for trouble at all.
You borderline pushover. And you're a borderline pushover, but
I'm a borderline pushover.
And that's why
when you do me wrong, ask Joe. I don't.
That's why all that other stuff.
Letting it go. Oh man, it's like you're dead to me.
Right, but that's why all that other stuff happens.
Candy, I love your shirt.
That's why those extremes, right? So that goes back to earlier, right? That's why you operate in those extremes, because for you are the borderline pushover. So then your knee-jerk response when you're hurt is, I hate everybody. You know what I mean? Like or I'm angry. You all just cut me off. And the reality is that's a response. That's a response mechanism and a defense mechanism. That's not necessarily what's truly who you are underneath. And I think that's going to take some support and some help. And all of us have those moments in those spaces where, and you're really not as aware about it as you think. You know that you have these behaviors, but you're not aware of why. And so awareness, like I said, it's layers to this thing. And so you got to be, you got to be willing to pull the layers back. Once you identify something about yourself that you know that, and you become uncomfortable with it, it then becomes your responsibility to find out why that thing is there. And then you may need some support in helping you unearth the origins.
You tell me I need.
But once you may need some support to help you unearth the origins. And
she's like, I didn't see any help. I said you need some support.
Support to help you unearth the origins.
Oh no.
And be able to get to a place of healing for yourself, because those kinds of behaviors and actions come from a place where we need to heal, right? Where we need to be healing and whole. And a lot of our, like you said, sis, you hit it on the head, Candice, when you talked about your trauma. Trauma leaves an impact. Every experience, and I said this, I don't know if I said this the last time we've met, every experience leaves an imprint from which we develop our core values and beliefs and our behaviors as a response.
Right.
If those experiences are tainted, we have trauma, we have misinformation, we don't learn what we need to learn, like the financial literacy piece. The reality is we will not get better if we
No.
don't allow ourselves to have a different experience.
Right.
And so part of the problem is when we are defensive, we're not in the position yet to say, I am ready to have a different experience.
Right.
And so that's the hard part, right?
That's
When
true.
you allow yourself to get to the place where you're ready to have a different experience.
Right. And I think that's where therapy comes, because we don't know. But we were taught you don't need therapy. Go get a drink. But that's not the right thing.
Give it to Jesus.
That's not the
Give
right.
it to
Right.
We was taught to give it to Jesus in church, and didn't taught to go get a drink on Saturday night.
Yeah.
Dude, don't play. But that's where it's taught. But now you realize that most people need therapy for something, because it's something that you just don't know. And your family can help you. The stuff that you've gone through, you need help with it. And a lot of times you just need an unbiased opinion to help you get through it. Your friend, your sister, your brother, it's a biased opinion. You know what I mean? You need somebody that's give you what you need and help you get through it. And there's nothing wrong with it. It actually makes you better, because it helps you be a better you at the end of the day. And a lot of times we don't want to do that because we feel like somebody's going to judge us. But who knows if you don't tell them?
Yeah, you're right about that.
And you can't get better. You can't get better unless, and you know what? We always talk about therapy, and I'm an advocate for therapy because I'm a therapist. I'm gonna say this last thing and be quiet. This will be my final words. But for us as a people, we are not always comfortable because we've been put in competition with each other so much. A life coach, but just somebody that's better at doing what you want to do than you are.
There you go.
Putting that person in your life and making commitment to trust them, give them access to you, and teach you something can help us improve in a lot of areas without having to attach your insurance and pay a $25 copay.
Right.
So be very mindful, but we haven't been taught to do that, to find somebody that's better at it than us and make it a point to create relationships so that we can learn and grow and be better. We don't do that. We've not been taught to do that. We're not comfortable doing that. We avoid doing that. Honey, iron sharpens iron. And we don't like the idea and the concept of putting ourselves in a position where we are the weaker vessel or the one that knows less. We don't like that.
Yeah. I completely agree. I'll leave everybody on this. I truly believe we need to stop focusing on the destination. I believe that life is truly about the journey. And whatever you do, you just need to enjoy the ride, and you'll take a whole lot of stress off yourself. You know what I'm saying? We're too busy focusing on a destination and not believing and truly and experiencing and loving the journey of it all. You know what I'm saying? So I truly believe that if we enjoy the ride and stop focusing on the destination, we'd be a lot better in life. Anybody else got any final thoughts before we close it out?
I just say survive on purpose. So whatever that is for you, if it's healing, if it's cutting people off, if it's being a better you, like exercising, do whatever it is that you need to do to be better, like on purpose. It shouldn't be, oh, I went through this. No, you need better credit. What do? Fix it. You know what I mean? Eat better. Cut people off. If you need to heal, go to therapy. It is what it is at this point. You're trying to survive something that nobody gets out alive. But while you're here, be the best person that you can. So do all things that you need to survive.
The only thing I would say, I guess, is just if you have found at an early age something that you're passionate about, never let anybody derail it, and stay focused on that path until you get where you want to be.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it.
Great show. Great show.
Great show. Great show. Love to see y'all. Love y'all out there. Y'all take it easy, man. It's always about the community. Y'all take it easy. Peace.